Thank you, Christine. Yeah. In March of this year, Crossroads was invited by the Lieutenant Governor's office to go to 3 fly-in Aboriginal communities, Poplar Hill, Muskrat Dam, and Kingfisher Lake, all in Ontario, to show what the government was doing to provide laptop computers to school children. Her Honour Ruth Ann Onley, wife of the Lieutenant Governor, was a very welcome guest. Last week, His Honour David Onley invited us to Queen's Park in Toronto to witness and take part in a cross-cultural dialogue on reconciliation, exploring how we as a province can strengthen and rebuild relationships between Aboriginal and non-Aboriginal people. The Lieutenant Governor's suite could barely hold the participants last Wednesday.
For the last 8 years, Ontario's fly-in communities have been the primary focus of Aboriginal work undertaken by Ontario's Vice-Regal Office, begun by my predecessor, the Honourable James K. Bartleman, whose portrait is on the wall right here, Ontario's first Aboriginal Lieutenant Governor. And it has continued because a non-Native Lieutenant Governor, like me, promised to sustain the programs. We are all victims of our past. In this, we have no choice. Our personal history has been written. We can at times revisit that past, sometimes in joy, sometimes in great pain, but we cannot change a single word. It cannot be changed. But we do not have to be prisoners. We do not have to be prisoners of our past. And in this, we do have a choice. Today, we begin the process of choice. Today, we begin the process of change. Today, we begin to shape and build the key of reconciliation, the key that will open the lock to a future that we will write in this generation so that we can look back. And as important, our children and our grandchildren can look back and be amazed at what we accomplished. Manitoba residential school survivor Edward Gamblin has written a compelling, healing song entitled The Survivor's Voice. The lyrics are touching. Among the most profound are the words, "Could never understand why you can't look at me. The fire I walked through wasn't my choice. Why just me? Canada, heal with me. If you open your heart, you can hear a survivor's voice."
Now, does the Lieutenant Governor mean that this was the beginning of Truth and Reconciliation? Like he said, today we begin?
Well, clearly it's not the beginning of Truth and Reconciliation. The Prime Minister officially led the charge with the apology. He's calling this a series of meetings on the theme of truth and reconciliation, revitalizing reconciliation in Ontario. In other words, this is a man who continues in the passion of his predecessor to see this thing happen, not just be a token. And Jim, it was a sacred event. The atmosphere in the legislative building and specifically in that room was worshipful. We began with the Red Spirit Drum Group drumming. We witnessed a pipe ceremony, as in peace pipe, and several dignitaries gave impassioned suggestions and observations, beginning with the Honourable Justice Murray Sinclair, Chair of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission.
And today's gathering is a call to action. You have all been invited here as leaders to hear, to talk, to plan, to find a place, and to commit. Reconciliation is about respectful relationships. Reconciliation is about respect. And so the question that we ask you to think about as you contemplate the day's proceedings, and those of you who are called upon to participate, is to ask yourself the question, knowing what we know, having heard what we heard, what should we do about this? What can I do about this? Where can we go with this knowledge? How can we work together? And those are important questions.
As I talk to Canadians about these things, I find this tremendous, overwhelming sense of guilt comes over people, kind of an emotional bankruptcy that occurs You know, that's maybe one phase of awareness, but don't get stuck there. We need you to get beyond that, for even that is a bit self-indulgent. Even that doesn't honor the generosity or the truth of the history that we share together. I ask you to move beyond that.
In the church that I'm a part of, we call this restoring right relations. Whatever the language is, we are seeking to walk a new path together. As Barney suggested, we need to learn to walk together. We need to take small steps, but each step should lead to another step. Today's session is not just an event isolated from everything else we need to be about. It is the step that really transforms.
The work of the Commission is about reaching out to all Canadians so that as a country we can grow in our understanding of our past mistakes related to residential schools, and our Prime Minister and all of the leaders of our political parties have indeed referred to it as a mistake and as wrong history. So that as a country we can learn from those mistakes, and so that as a country we can heal from the continuing brokenness that those mistakes have caused.
Jim, I was reminded today there are 3,600 suicides a year in Canada. That rate is 5 to 7 times higher among Native young people. And these are communities.
Does that relate to the truth and reconciliation issue, or does that relate to the fact that they still have no hope? They're isolated, undereducated, and bored. I mean, what does it have to do with the residential schools?
There's so many factors. You see, it's not just those, and we will see both represented. It's not just those who were abused in residential schools. It's their children, because those children were taken out of their communities. They didn't get the life skills. They were stripped of everything that gave them identity and resources, capacity to be good parents.
Well, these are the parents of the kids who are committing suicide.
Yeah. It's not the only issue, but it's one we need to wrap our head around.
I'm just wondering where the point of beginning really is. I mean, it was one thing for the Prime Minister to apologize. It's great that the Lieutenant Governor has taken this initiative, but on the ground, was there any sense from what you heard there that there is a starting point?
Well, this is the starting point. Listening, getting to know you and what has wounded you, where you struggle, what's important to you. I think you'll be finding an answer in this next segment. The moving and meaningful Revitalizing Reconciliation event featured a circle of witnesses who included residential school survivors, First Nations elders, and a number of other prominent Canadians who shared their stories and their hearts. Here are a few of them.
How am I supposed to forgive when there's still so many huge issues going on in my community that in a lot of ways, Canada is still perpetuating?
Reconciliation means that those stereotypes of people who just won't do what they have to do to catch up with civilized society, that notion of savagery which still leaves us on the margins in the society that's grown up in our own country, in our own land. That's what reconciliation means. Dismantling those stereotypes so that at the heart of every child, in every schoolyard, of every person watching TV programs, they see us for who we are, as has been presented here this morning. Now,
if we're serious about what we're doing here and across the country, then we need to acknowledge that there is a power greater than us that can guide us. We also can ask the ancestors, like was said here, to walk with us, your ancestors, my ancestors, because we need help, folks. We need help. We do. Not just us, people that endured the atrocities and still here, right? Still here through that pain, through the trials and tribulations as alcoholics, drug addicts, whatever we became.
Suicide victims?
Suicide victims.
Yeah.
We came from out under that.
The writer of Hebrews reminded us that we are surrounded by a great cloud of witnesses, those who've gone before us. A living model of forgiveness, a man you've interviewed, Jim, a great former guest here, Grand Chief Stan Beardy of the Anishinaabe-Aski Nation, which covers about 2/3 of Ontario. His only son, Daniel, was killed in 2004 at the age of 18. 49 First Nations communities and many young people look to this man for inspiration. We heard a lot. Reconciliation was the big word here today, and an emphasis on remembering the past but moving forward. A lot of pain here today. How did you feel about this morning?
I think in order to move forward as a country and to maintain the prosperity and high quality of life, the Canadians, as well as the Native people, have to go through a lot of pain, because it's good and it is essential that we understand our past. Mm-hmm. When we talk about reconciliation, we're talking about our collective history, our collective past. It's not a First Nation past. It's not just a mainstream past. We're talking about
Canada's
history.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what we're trying to get across to the larger society, that there is history that needs to be acknowledged, mm-hmm. that if we can continue to be prosperous and a good country, that we need to deal with it. And it's going to be involve a lot of pain, but that is essential if we are to continue to enjoy what Canada has to offer today. So what we talk about reconciliation is very real and is very much today.
A day of tears, a lot of restrained emotions. Canadians, along with Aboriginal people, need to understand what has been lost, stolen, grieve and rebuild together. This is an ongoing process. Take note, by the way, Métis country gospel singer Yvonne St. Germain. You remember, Jim, she recorded a memorial CD for Stan Beardy's son, Daniel. She's the 4-time winner of the Aboriginal People's Choice Award for Best Gospel CD. She is going to be here. She's our guest next Friday, October 14th. Mark your calendar.